We are going to present together with Mark the use case and the journey we have taken together with Ferrer Group. Unfortunately, they cannot be there, but we have a long history with them already, since we have been involved in control system migrations with the CCS and batch system as well. And now we are with the OSI infrastructure for them. We can, let's say, speak about all experience together with Mark. To give a few words about Ferrer Group, they are one of the largest pharmaceutical groups in Spain. They have a presence in China as well, the US, and of course, Spain itself. And Interkim SA is the site that we've been mostly busy with them working. They have 5 production plants of API and a very, very complex batch system, one of the most complex in the country. So that was actually one of the challenges that we've been facing that Mark will explain a little bit more later. And with that, I will give you the work to Mark, but firstly, I will introduce the agenda. Yeah, thank you, Mark. So we'll present the 4.0 project we faced together with Ferrer. Then we'll speak about the challenges we faced, less the connection with the batch system that we have with OSI, and then the results and the future stage that Group Ferrer is going to face in the next year. So I give the word to Mark.
So to present myself, I work for OSIsoft together with Fernando. We are a system integrator company, OSIsoft partners, and our focus is to give automation and MESMOM solutions, operational intelligence, for the food and life science industry. Fernando, you can explain a little bit of the business case?
Yes. As I was saying before, we were facing some migration of the DCS system and the batch system as well. But one of the pending tasks, let's say, that was always staying there was the historian. They have an historian in place, not so robust, let's say. So when we were getting into these migrations done, we knew that in a certain moment we had to face this migration into a more reliable, let's say, more robust platform that also can give us some projection, let's say, more than just storing data in the system. So, of course, more stability was the key reasons to, let's say, present the case and do the migration finally. Also, the options to be the capability of taking data from many sources, not only the nicest one, like they were saying in the previous version. We need to capture data from many sources that sometimes is not that easy to do it. And finally, we also needed to improve the procedures and try to use less paper and put this into electronic records. Okay, so it was mainly the initial motivators to start a project, but Mark will explain more details how this become a little bit more bigger.
Yeah, thank you. So, as a start for this project, we installed the infrastructure following OSIsoft guidelines, and we integrated it with all data sources, including process control, but alarms and events as well, batch and some manual data. And the idea was to integrate all this production and operational data and transform or make the PI system become an operational infrastructure, a performant operational infrastructure, where we could or we can do things on top of it, like electronic batch report, review by exception, also do advanced analysis, performance analysis, notifications, maintenance. So this was the objective. The first thing that we did once we did the integration with the data sources was to create a plant model, an AF model, initially for basically maintenance and some maintenance KPI notifications to alert the plant. And with the integration with the batch system, we also created a batch model, SIT8 batch model, to have all the recipe parameters and to construct a real traceability batch and a real electronic batch report. Okay. Using RT reports, which was first the integration with the batch system, but then using RT reports, what we could facilitate was the introduction of the review by exception, the concept of review by exception in order to eliminate papers. So we were not just focusing on showing the process or some of the processes, but saying, okay, I want to see the deviations or the alarms of one part, and then try to reduce as much as possible the information that I have to review, because I only want to see the exceptions. The focus was on exactly on focusing on deviations and the parameters for these deviations. We also facilitated, it also facilitated us to create EVR for quality reports with all the recipe parameters coming from production and from the batch system. Okay. One of the important things, like everybody knows, is the validation process. For this, we followed the typical GAN5 using OSIsoft guidelines. Okay. The nice thing of this is that we can reuse many of the protocols and most of the protocols and the guidelines and documentation already done and considered as a standard by OSIsoft. Okay, so we qualified the infrastructure with the typical design specifications and IOQs and PQs following the GAN5 model. We tried to use templated protocols as much as possible, which allowed us to reuse and reduce time. The training in this part was and support for the execution of these protocols, and the creation was an important thing. And in the end, this validation process, following it in a standard way, what allowed us is to reach an optimal level of qualification, not to over or under qualify, but to reach that optimal target. Okay, so it was really a good way of doing it. We consider it a good way. Project challenges, like I said, so qualification and working on a GMP environment, especially if it's the first time that you work with a system, the PI system on a GMP environment, this always raises a concern of whether you will be compliant or not. But since it is approved infrastructure and we have worked for this for many years with the PI system in a regulatory environment, and using the guidelines, it was really streamlined. It was easy to work. I wouldn't say easy, but it worked in the right way. Okay, but the biggest challenge that we saw was in the acceptance of the project, and it's a pity that the customer is not here, but it was all a learning process, because when we start these Industry 4.0 projects, we always see that it takes a time of acceptance of a solution, okay? Because the end users, the customer doesn't know all the qualities or all the possibilities that you can do with a system, because they have never done such a project, and it's part of let's say a learning process, which we try to, let's say, optimize with a lot of training and coaching sessions in order to facilitate them to take as much business value from the system as possible. Okay, so this was really a challenge, and I think that it was very successful. And thanks to this approach, detecting the users and the needs of the users and conceiving the solution together, we could really optimize the solution and the business value. This was thanks to a combined effort, not just IT and automation, but the stakeholders in the project that participated at some point and could provide the business value in order to create and develop a good project. Okay, so the collaboration of the different stakeholders inside Interkim, the Ferrer Group, together with the integrator as experts on the solution, was very successful. As final project results, so like Fernando said, the initial objectives were very basic. Was just, okay, install an historian, data infrastructure where, okay, I have data integrity. I want to reduce paper. How much paper? They don't know. But then they could see, as they started gaining knowledge on the solution and on the system, that they could include improvements in their operations and in their by reducing, well, improving process control procedures or alarm procedures, by improving their quality system thanks to their review by exception, the introduction of review by exception, and thanks to also the, let's say, the democratization of the information inside the organization. Okay, so the access to information is more democratized, and it's easier for the different users or the different operators, the different staff inside the factory to access the information. The reduction of, indeed, the access to this information and the introduction of some important KPIs introduced to the reduction of, indeed, mistakes, which cost sometimes a serious impact. Okay. At this moment, we are exploring together, so introduction of new possibilities, because, like we said, the initial scope was limited enough, but as they were seeing more capabilities, they gained more, let's say, more interest. They have been introducing new KPIs for not just production or quality, also performance, for performance of reactors, asset performance, and also the preparation for the group rollout for the other sites of the factory, because at this moment it was only for the API plant. Okay. So to resume, we could say that the initial challenges were simple, like paper reduction, okay, improvement of some quality procedures. There was also a challenge of user adoption, acceptance of the project, data integrity. So what we did was to install a system, qualify the system, create a data context of FAF, coach together with the customer during the whole project to qualify, to obtain the value out of the system. And as benefits, like we said, improvement in automation, improvement in the quality procedures, in the quality operations that they do, in operational mistakes, reduction of operational mistakes, and expansion of at the group level, okay, at a site level, but also at the group level. So that's it. Thanks you very much. If you have questions, open to answer them.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. I have a question about how do you manage the project. I understand that for GMP projects and the complexity of the validation, you cannot use, let's say, an agile approach doing small increases of the system and testing and redoing. No? I can imagine that you have to build the whole thing at once and then validate. Can you explain a little bit how do you develop the whole solution, the project approach? I don't need the details. Thank you.
So, well, internally in our company, in our group, we usually use agile methodologies for all projects, no matter what. But it's true that they have, let's say, a fixed user requirements. Although we try to manage to, in some parts of the project with the customer, to follow a more agile. We use Scrum internally, but we used a more agile methodology by giving, let's say, on the workshops with some go and feedback, we try to fit the solution and try to conceive a solution together. That's how we tried. But of course, in the end, you have to be compliant with user requirements that they design. No? But in some parts, it was open enough so that we could follow an agile methodology. I hope I answered the question.
Hi, thanks very much. That was a great presentation. Just a question as regards you adopted S88 as part of the structure going through, and you were talking about training and coaching.
Right.
How much of an effort was involved, or how many versions, etc., did you take to get a good, strong asset framework structure, or did it just go perfectly well the first time?
Well, I have to say that in this site, as we understood from Siemens, because they have the Siemens batch execution system, it's one of the most complex batch systems in Spain. And it was really a challenge for the amount of the complexity of the batch. But what we did was an integration with the batch execution system, and this already forces you to implement this, the hierarchy that it creates is already the one that it inherits from the batch system. So in this way, you are sort of forced, okay? Yeah, you are sort of forced to use this standard because it's the one that the interface uses. You can, of course, then tweak it a little bit, but you are entitled to use it. If you would create it by your own, from scratch, then you could do whatever, but we didn't do it like that. Is that okay?
Yeah, one of the things we probably didn't mention that clearly is that when we migrate the system, the historian that they already had, we not only start with the new data coming to the system, but we also were putting the old information that they already had into PI. Of course, it's not something that happened immediately, but it's something that also they request as something that they need to have for the system to have everything in only one complete system. So that's also interesting to mention. Other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.